Hello, everyone, and welcome. Happy Tuesday. This is America Some Assembly Required. And today I've got Anna back on, and we're going to be talking about the actual how-tos of how to build your assembly. So I hope that you'll bring your questions, and we'll begin to talk about some of the things that we've already discussed in the first 51 episodes, and then how to actually implement those into building your assembly. So I'm going to bring Anna on stage. Hi, Anna. How are you today?
Doing okay, Lisa. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much. So you survived the time change, and did you have time change in Alaska?
We did kind of, sort of.
Okay.
It was a messy affair at best, but everybody finally got online. I think we're now all in the same time zone.
There you go. That's a good thing. So yeah, it's always that first week is always tough, isn't it?
Yeah, and in this case, there wasn't a real strong automatic agreement between the atomic clocks and the time zone changes, the time difference.
Right.
Anyway, we got through it, and I think that we're keeping on our schedules.
Okay. Well, I'm hoping someday that's going to go away.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing, isn't it?
It is. It is. I don't think it's really good for anybody's health either, to be honest. So, I'm kind of hoping that we'll be able to get rid of that eventually.
Well, I knew that I wasn't living right when my big thing I looked forward to was gaining an extra hour of sleep.
Sort of a false economy, isn't it?
Yeah, really.
So anyhow, all right. Well, Anna, one of the questions that I encounter most often when I'm out talking to the states about their state assemblies and trying to help them get some of their organization together is they go, I've read how to build an assembly. I've watched all your videos, but I really don't know how we're supposed to take all that information and put together an assembly. And as much as that seems kind of incredulous, I think we need to talk a little bit about what that process really is, and how, I know from our perspective how we did it. And I've said to many of the assemblies, I said, my father was an inventor. He was incredible at putting pieces together and making something work. But in the process of putting those pieces together, he might have tried 99 times until he found the one time that worked, right? And that's kind of my statement to the assemblies is sometimes we're going to try things. We're going to have to course correct. We're going to make mistakes. Nothing's written in stone. But the important part is trying, right?
Right. If you keep trying, you get there.
That's right. That's right.
And it's not necessarily going to be the same answer for every assembly. I mean, you've got a completely different group of people with different skills, different backgrounds, experiences. And, what works for one assembly might not work for another. All we can do is kind of share, information about how we did it or how we're approaching it in our assembly, and then bringing it out to the rest of the people. It's not something that can be dictated, certainly. And it's not something that you can just have this instant little template formula and boom, there you are.
Right.
So our building blocks are living people, and living people have many different variations. So
right.
I think that element of trying and being determined is what counts, because, as my father once said, it's not over till the fat lady sings. It's not done until you're done. It's an effort that requires a lot of commitment and determination to get through it all. as you know, Lisa, having gotten through it all. And this is it's something that if you don't have the right people, you have to go out and draft them. You have to go find them in your communities. You have to spread the word. You have to give people the information that they need in order to succeed and get the right blocks in there, get those right bricks, the ones that have the skills and have the vision. And if you don't have that in your original little core group, well, expand your core group until you do have those necessary elements and people. It's sort of like baking a cake, you know. Okay, we got the flour, we got the salt, we need the baking powder, right?
Right. I often say, too, to the assemblies that, those that are maybe struggling a little bit, what are you doing? Are you meeting regular? The more often you regularly meet and have things that you are educating or doing or discussing, the more people realize that you are doing something. And when they finally realize what it is that you're doing, they'll find worth in that and join in to try to help you. They believe they wouldn't have changed their status if they didn't already believe that they were doing the right thing. And now we just have to get them active, which means we have to show the value of placing their time in our efforts, right?
Right. Well,
So it really comes down to getting active
and finding a niche, finding a place where you can apply your skills and your background to the problem at hand. Right. And, it's funny, we were having this big fight recently. There are those people that consider everyone who's on public assistance to be a useless eater. They literally think this. And it's very evil standpoint. It's a self-denigrating standpoint, ultimately, because when you start tearing down the value of one man, you tear down the value of all men. And it's an ineluctable truth and process that you can't stop. Once you get on that slippery slope of denigrating and devaluing one group of people or one person, then you have done it to everybody. And we somehow have to get to that understanding in our culture so that we stop doing this to ourselves. But we were having this big discussion, a very high-level discussion of, how can society bear the costs and burdens of welfare, and how are we going to continue to feed all these quote-unquote useless eaters? Well, the problem isn't, the problem is always being displaced on the people who are the victims of this system. People who don't have an opportunity, who don't have a future, who don't have a job, who don't fit in, who aren't able to find a niche and contribute. And it's just as frustrating for them as it is for anybody else, because we naturally want to be part of our community and to contribute to life around us and be part of things. And when we're isolated by a social economic situation that we can't change or don't have a clear pathway to change, then we're kind of marooned in this existence which falls short of a life. And in fact, the welfare system has mechanisms that enslave people and keep them in the welfare system rather than giving them a clear pathway to however limited your first step might be, take the steps to get out of the welfare system. And I'm an advocate for the welfare recipients in that I advocate opportunities and ways for them to get out of the welfare system. I have to take this as an important call. I'll be right out. I'll be right
Sure.
back, James.
So as Anna was talking about what she's, advocating and doing, we also had that discussion this morning on our assembly. So on Tuesday mornings, at 11 o'clock, our assembly gathers, and we sort of have a town hall or a coffee. We call it our Tuesday morning coffee meeting. And it's a free meeting where people can come and talk about different issues and different things. And we talked a little bit about this because the growing concern is, how do we help somebody who's hungry? How can we get involved, or what can we do? And my suggestion was, no, you should know where your local food pantries are. You should know what churches have a food pantry in them. You should also, maybe look at your public library. I was at the public library the other day, and they actually had a food pantry shelf just outside in the hallway of the library, in the foyer of the library, where, you could put staples. And there was, I was looking, there was instant oatmeal, there was some breakfast bars, there were canned goods, staples on the shelf, a few paper products, just those kinds of things. And so we need to get familiar with right now what resources are in our community that we might be able to, help donate to or spend time at. Maybe there's hands needed at the local soup kitchen. And, eventually, as I said to them, this is one of the purposes of our militia, is to be able to go and set up a soup kitchen, set up a line where we can feed the hungry, give care to those that might need some extra, maybe health care and things. But also realize it is our opportunity in outreach to be able to tell them about our assembly, tell them what the benefits are when GFG comes open. There really is no real reason, other than maybe waiting for their status to correct, that they wouldn't be able to take an advantage of, something that our militia could put together in terms of food or food kitchen or whatever. And then, get their status corrected and get started with their own personal credit when that happens. Correct, Anna?
Absolutely. The action of the militia during an emergency is not that much different than the action of the militia during a food shortage, which is an emergency of a different kind.
Mm-hmm.
And in this country, a food shortage is more likely to occur simply because the transfer mechanisms break down. The truckers stop trucking, the railroads stop hauling, that sort of thing, where the food can't be transported and can't be processed to be made available to people. It exists. It simply is a logistical nightmare that is being unleashed on the country. And so I do recommend that the militias think about this. We regularly have plans to set up, community kitchens and soup kitchens after a natural disaster. Well, an infrastructure failure is not a natural disaster, but it's a disaster nonetheless. So we should very much be thinking about planning for that kind of an eventuality when we hear that 600,000 truckers are out of work.
Right. So, we many of us have truckers, CDL truckers on our assemblies. We need to know who they are, because they're going to be some of our first go-tos to be able to get some of those supplies trucked in. And this goes to getting to know our people, right? And getting to know their skills and developing that relationship with them so that when we need them, we can reach out and say, hey, I've got a special project. I need to get this done.
Yep, that's exactly so. And that's why part of our orientation, when new people come into the assemblies, a very important part of orientation is getting to know them. Who are they? What community in the surrounding area do they live in? What are their particular concerns? What are their particular backgrounds and skills? Are they connected to other communities? For example, the Amish come in and there are lots of different little groups out there that are, either cultural or religious or ethnic, or, that when we have one person come in, we're actually looking at an opportunity to reach an entire group of people. And so that orientation process is crucial, both in terms of growing your assembly, but in terms of deploying the human resources that we have in our assemblies in appropriate ways, involving people and getting them to contribute their insights and their skills, which are, everyone is unique,
Right.
So,
But this is where our assemblies start. That's the starting point right there, is going out and getting people and getting to know them. It's hard to be somebody's neighbor when you don't reach out and get to know who they are and make some connection with them, both physically and verbally, right? We need to be able to meet. We're so used to these things, but that doesn't replace sometimes the human contact. And that's especially what is important about right now, meeting people in our county, getting to know them, and starting to build towards the day when we bring up county assemblies. So the first step is getting to know our people, getting to know who they are, their skills, their interests, and beginning to really develop relationships. We get to also know their mindset and their character. So as we go through, we can kind of determine who is going to be good for a leadership position eventually, who we can count on when we really need someone to count on, right? Who's honest, who says who does what they say and says what they're going to do, and does it.
Right. And we also get a chance to encounter people coming through the door who have misunderstandings.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can head those misunderstandings off at the outset, you save yourself a lot of trouble later on. So orientation is crucial. And you have to have some good people assigned to orientation to kind of get to know these folks, figure out where they're coming from. Are they walking through the door because they heard there was something to be gained by doing so? Are they doing the right thing for the wrong reason? And if so, can you turn them toward doing the right thing for the right reason? Can you get them thinking in a different way about how we are all together in this endeavor, and how its success is crucial for everybody? Everybody's ultimate good is vested in the success of what we're doing. So it's not just a matter of taking from whatever benefit arises. It's a matter of being, because let me tell you, the kinds of discussions that we've had over the last several months, people have begun looking at that little graphic that we put out that showed the American government and the United States government, and made it very clear for people that the United States government is a separate entity that is functioning under delegated power. Many people had never thought about that before. Many people had never thought about the different parts and pieces of our government and what jurisdictions those parts and pieces address. And so now they've got this handy dandy little graphic that if they actually sit down and study it, they'll realize that, okay, we've got two governments here. And when they stop and analyze it some more, they're going to realize something else that's of crucial importance. Our American government is still standing.
Correct.
And once you add in this other little piece of information, that in 2021, we chartered two commercial banks, the Global Family Bank of Commerce on the sea and the Global Family Commercial Bank on the land. We have the white block, the air jurisdiction government, accessible also. So we have the full suite. Through our own efforts, And building upon what our forefathers provided for us, we've been able to resurrect our soil jurisdiction, our land jurisdiction, our sea jurisdiction, and our air jurisdiction. We are viable. We have a government. We are operating in all jurisdictions. And what does the United States government have at the present moment? One federal subcontractor that's on the ropes, frankly, that is functioning in the international jurisdiction of the sea. And that's it.
That's it. That's all there.
Right. That's all that's left of their government. And we are still here. We're still viable. And we're viable because what? We got busy. We made our declarations. We set up our recording systems. We got our people informed. We went out, we educated, we talked it up in our communities. We brought our assemblies together. And this is why we still have a viable government when all the other governments have failed.
Correct. So, with this, we talked about, doing that outreach, getting to know our neighbor, orientation, and that's really important in the development of our assembly, is pouring that kind of orientation and that kind of education to our people. We all come in green. We all come in with misconceptions because we've been taught differently. We've been indoctrinated differently, right? Yeah. And so we have to begin to learn what the real true history is and what the real true concepts of politics. Because frankly, after watching the federal government for our entire lifetimes fight back and forth and nothing getting accomplished. Oh, the Republicans are all in charge now and they get nothing done. Ooh, the Democrats are in charge and we go backwards. And ooh, the Republicans are in charge and we get nothing done. So we've seen this cycle off and on and off and on all our lives to realize that there are two wings of the same bird. And that bird's flapping around with one arm, well, with one wing, right? So we not able to fly. So it's important that the second step of building your assembly is orientation and education. Now in Ohio, we put those two things together. We kind of work with our education committee and the orientation committee to present evenings where we can get people firmly planted on the land. And we work those programs and keep working those programs. Eventually there'll be a 201, but we're still in the 101 course level, right? Of how to get everybody on the land and how to get them to operate in their lawful capacities. Right. So, with that, I can't stress to the assemblies when I speak to them how important it is to throw education and opportunities for education at our people. So, for example, on Ohio, we have, starting on Sunday at noon here, we have grand jury training. On Tuesdays, we have on Mondays, we have law education training. On Tuesdays, we have a rotating eight-week course that is on all kinds of topics of the assembly. On Wednesday, we have Sovereign's Way training, and we have court and jury training, how our courts operate, how our juror operates. And then we put that into actual actions within our meetings and our assembly. It's a lot of work. It's an everyday kind of thing. And until our assemblies really adopt that it is almost an everyday kind of thing, they're still going to be struggling along. We have to have that mindset to educate, 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 and then do, right?
Right. And I just wanted to, before we leave the topic of how ineffective and how two-blocked the political system is, look at what's happening right now. President Trump is trying to deal with something that was kicked into the air in 2013. Okay, back in 2013, then Pope Francis decided to bankrupt the United States corporation. And it was in his power to do so, so he bankrupted them in Chapter 7 involuntary bankruptcy. In 2015, President Obama, following along in obedience to this directive, did all of the paperwork and got everything set up for the actual bankruptcy to begin in terms of having a bankruptcy trustee and all of the rest of it. So then here in 2025, we're finally getting to the end of that bankruptcy. And who's in power? A feckless Republican who had nothing to do with it, but is getting blamed for all of the effect of it. So you see, these things take place over spans of time. And oftentimes we're winding up with a situation like this, where we're blaming one administration for something that was done 2 administrations, 3 administrations, 4 administrations in the past. And it's all just coming to fruition right here and now. And this is part of the evil of the political system that we've allowed to usurp against our American system. For example, we Americans have public elections for public offices. When you really get educated, you'll realize that what they've been doing is electing private corporation offices that don't even take an oath or have any public function. And so forth, they're completely irresponsible and unaccountable to the people that they're supposed to serve, except as shareholders who have given their proxy to a representative, okay, in a corporate electoral sense. This is crazy. Our whole country has been usurped, and we've been dead asleep at the wheel and haven't even realized in what capacity these people are, quote unquote, serving and what the limitations of their actual powers are. So, this is information that has to be studied, it has to be learned, it has to be integrated into our thought processes and into our actions so that we finally get control of our own government again and get to a point where our employees are not kicking our butts every day.
Right, exactly. So, again, we many of the assemblies say, well, when I talk to them, they'll say, well, we're holding assembly meetings once a month. And then we might get together here or there. And it's like, no, you need a regular schedule. You need to put things on, to begin with our General Assembly, we've always met once every 2 weeks. But in between, we had working groups, basically as committees of the whole that worked on and worked towards saying, okay, here's our How to Build an Assembly Handbook. Here's Anna's articles on these particular individual topics. And how do we make those come together along with the wishes and some of the things that Ohioans want to see their government function in?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how we brought together all of that documents that we sent you and pulled all that together. We did all that research. We did it as basically a committee of the whole. And when we went to our general assemblies, we just didn't have whatever to talk about. We had actual documents to look at, talk through, approve, discuss, debate, all of those things that led to the fact that we had working documents, right? Not dead documents, working documents, things that says, this is how we're going to go about keeping our books. This is how we're going to go about voting. This is how we're going to go about decorum. It's all those little things that help us operate in the long run. And so they're repeatable, they're measurable. We can refer back to them when we have a conundrum, right? And we can say, okay, here's what we have in our handbook. This is what the handbook says. Now, to begin with, we found holes. We're going to find holes. We're going to find things that at the time we did it, we didn't think we would need certain things. We need them. So we're going back through our documents and we're revising. And that'll be a living document for a very long time. But what it does is it helps us put into place the things that Ohioans want. When I give documents and I give a sample of that document out to the other assemblies, I tell them, now don't just change the names, make it your own. You're going to read things in there. You're going to go, we don't like that. Change it. Make it work for your assembly. You're going to find things in there that you've never thought of. And you're going to go, maybe we should adopt that process or that policy, that procedure in our assembly. It's a guide, right? And it's something we can refer back to when we have an issue on our assembly. We can refer back to that and know that we've got good thought. It's not a shotgun kind of an opinion. It isn't born in the heat of a moment. It's been well reasoned, it's been well researched, and it's moved through.
Well, and having that kind of historical background of considerations already taken place is sort of like the American common law, in that you have cases that you've considered before and you don't have to recreate the wheel because you have reference to the same or very similar circumstances. Okay, so it's good to have something that's written that gives you that kind of framework that you can work with. And while we don't want to become overly hidebound and have the situation that the federal government now has with 80 million unenforceable statutes and codes, it's really great to have kind of a broad brush guideline that indicates the thought process that went into it in the first place, so that when you come to it again as a subject, you get a chance to look at that subject from the perspective of your current concerns and needs, but also with the wisdom of how it's been looked at before, to see, okay, are we dealing with it the same way? Are we dealing with something slightly different? Is this an expansion on what we were originally considering? And that is invaluable. That's what we have as part of our government. It's one of the advantages that we have as living, breathing, thinking people, is that we always have the capability of using the same logic circuits and applying them to new information and making changes accordingly.
Right. And I think the important part of what you just said, Anna, was the broad brush. We don't want to get into the nitty gritty 330 million laws to operate, because it just, you've got, I always tell everybody, is this common sense? Is this prudency? Is it common sense? Is it logical? And if something passes that test, those three tests, then a broad brush is all you really need, because you're going to look at that from those perspectives of, common sense, prudent man standards, prudency, and logic, right? Mm-hmm. So, and is it good for all the people in our state? Not just good for one or a small group or, this particular faction over here, because we're always going to have that. It's got to be good for the entire state.
Right. And we have to amend our thinking so that we do not allow ourselves to fall into cronyism and, the kind of thinking that, we're going to control things and keep our group small so that we can control it just here with our little group. There are people out there that actually think that, and they don't realize that the real strength of the government lies in having a lot of people agreed on certain and invaluable points, such as the right to privacy. If we come together and say our right to privacy is important, and we're not going to let Big Brother just come in here and surveil us down to what kind of bathroom tissue we prefer, then we are standing together in our mutual self-interest. And this is a concept that our forefathers had very firmly in mind, and that we need to keep firmly in mind, is that we institute government for our mutual self-interest, meaning everybody's self-interest. We do not create a government to protect just a few people. We create a government to protect all of us. And so keeping that foremost in our minds as we go forward is that this is the protection, this is the means by which we, all of us, are protected, and we enforce our will and our values on the public institutions that are supposed to serve us. And, if this were working the way it should work, our right to privacy is already clearly stated in the constitutions. We shouldn't have to go back and tell our public employees that our right to our privacy is sacred to us and we will not put up with them messing with it. We shouldn't have to, but we do, because we have people in the Congress who can't read. Another example is the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. What part of shall not be infringed or obstructed do they need to have interpreted for them? It shouldn't even be part of a discussion. Okay, so we need to enforce our constitutions as they're written, and we also need to think about the benefit that those constitutional guards and provisions and limitations provide us as living people. I don't know about anybody else, but my right to privacy is important to me. I don't want the government in my home spying on me. I don't want the government telling me which brand of toothpaste I should use. Okay? Right. I want the government to mind its business and do its job. And right. I think the vast number of Americans feel the same way.
Their newest ploy is all of these smart devices that they're advocating for in your homes. Your electric companies are willing to give you, programmable thermostats, hook it up to the internet for your convenience, right? Right. And what they want to end up doing is they want to end up controlling your environment in your home. Right. And so, that is a huge invasion of our privacy and our right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness in the ways we want it to be, right?
Right, and they're doing this by impersonating us and misrepresenting us as things instead of people. Now, bear in mind, if you let someone identify you as a corporation and give your name to a corporation so that they can facilitate fraud on the court and bring you forward as a corporation, there is no law against murdering a corporation.
Right. That's right.
You have cause to be alarmed. You have cause to object to what they're doing. You have cause to demand reform of their operations, of their courts on this soil, because their laws are not our laws, and they have no right to be misaddressing our people and pretending that they are instead their persons.
Right.
This is what's going on, and we have to stop it. We have to stop them. And they're well organized. They know what they're doing. It's for their benefit, not ours. So we have to organize ourselves and make use of our powers and enforce their limitations so that we no longer have situations like this. Part of that is getting our drill assemblies up and functioning and having our own courts reliably in session so that we don't have to deal with their courts. This is the upshot. As long as our courts are functioning, we don't have to listen to their courts. As long as our law is being enforced and represented, we don't have to pay attention to what they're enforcing or doing. So if people want a foundation of their freedom, there it is. Get your own courts up and running. and keep them up and running so that you never have to pay attention to what some smarmy bar attorney says in deference to his king. If you don't want the king lording it over you as a subject, if our forefathers' suffering means anything to you, if freedom means anything to you, if you don't want to be accorded the status of a British subject and be in bondage to the king from the time you're a baby until you die, then it's time to stand up and re-inhabit and repopulate your own government and tell their government what their contract requires.
Right. Boy, is Ohio getting ready to do that. And we have another infamous notice going back out to our public utilities here very shortly this week.
Good.
And our legislative bodies to let them
Good.
know we're not putting up with it. So yes, and that's really the purpose of, so many people have, I think in many ways, the assemblies have missed the purpose of why they're there to exist. We're there to direct our federal and our municipal governments.
Right.
We're there to get them back in the box they're supposed to be in, and for us to assume the business that we were supposed to be concerned with.
Right.
So, within this, we're at that point where we have to begin to let them know what we think. That's our first step.
Right.
Our second step is let them know where their boundaries are.
Exactly.
And then we've got to have enough people who are willing to step up, get their hands dirty, and go to work.
Well, let me give you a little bit of a kind of an insight from where I have to sit every day, because of course I'm working primarily in the international jurisdiction.
Mhm.
And so we wind up with situations where people who have been indoctrinated in a completely different system all their lives, British subjects, don't understand what our government is supposed to be doing, right?
Right.
We have to teach ourselves, but then we have to teach them. We have to teach our employees. We have to step aside and say, hey, we do this differently. That's okay for your people, but no, that doesn't apply to us. Yeah, your people have to pay all these outrageous taxes and additional excises and levies, but it has nothing to do with us because those are debts that your king owes, and we don't owe those debts. Now, we have to be able to talk to them in a way that they can understand so that they get the difference and they realize and take their constitutional obligation seriously. Because for so long, the constitutions were not being enforced from this side. Our state assemblies were not in session, and so our state citizens were not available to enforce the constitutions. Now that's changed. Now our state assemblies are in session. Now we have identified state citizens, and those people can enforce the constitutions with impunity. And I wanted to point out, a lot of people have confused the UN Corporation with the United Nations. These are two separate things. The United Nations organizations the organization itself is a profoundly good thing. The UN Corporation that hides behind it is a bad thing. We have the same sort of situation that we had with the Roman Catholic Church in its sacred capacity being used as a storefront by the office of the Roman Pontiff. Okay, so oftentimes you see that these bad organizations will get involved, infiltrate, somehow or another, get a relationship and use a good organization as a storefront. It's called a storefront. So that the good organization is able to be trusted and to have functions that everybody relies upon, and then the bad organization is in the background pretending some affiliation with the good organization and trading on the good organization's reputation. The same exact thing has been done in this country, where the good reputation of the Federation of States, doing business as the United States of America with a capital T on the, was deliberately used as a storefront by the small THE United States of America Incorporated. It's the same exact business, okay? So the UN is the victim of this just as much as we were, just as much as the Roman Catholic Church was. And so do not mistake the evils of the UN corporation for the good of the United Nations organization. The United Nations organization has been one of our primary supporters and friends in getting an established government of, for, and by the people recognized and empowered. So don't fall victim to ignorant thinking and don't just assume things. There is a part of the UN corporation which is very bad. There is a part of the UN organization which is very good. And in dealing with these disparate but similarly named entities, we have to develop a certain amount of perspective and a certain amount of discernment so that we can effectively and appropriately react. Right now, the United Nations organization is recognizing the fact that we still have a viable government here, that we're still on the board, that we have all our jurisdictions covered, and that the United States government, the incorporated entities that have been masquerading as our government and operating under delegated powers, is in bad shape. Okay? Right. So we're going to have to step forward with the help of other countries and other people all around the world, acting on behalf of the living people. And so this is how the living people actually support each other and bring forward their government, which then is responsible for directing incorporated subcontractors and vendors of government services.
Right. So Anna, in that information, though, you know, a lot of times they say, well, we don't know how we're going to operate. And that's the purpose of the committees, correct? Our committees are the ones that actually do the work. Not necessarily our chairman, not necessarily our, treasurers. They have people behind them, many hands making light work, right? And our committees are the ones that actually we govern by committee. So we have the input of many people in order to come up with and work through all of the issues of our assembly. So, I mean, they're the ones that are out there doing some of the research. They're the ones that are maybe putting together some of the notices or the operations of our assemblies. And so that's why getting committees together is the important activity. Once you get to know each other and you're starting to educate each other, you're also educating in those committees. I have a lot of people who say, I don't know enough to go on committee. My answer is you'll learn, right? Because that's where we can get some in-depth knowledge on certain topics if we're interested in doing them, right?
Right. And these committees then report back to the General Assembly on a regular basis. And that's where everybody else learns what the committees have already kind of taken in and masticated and worked on and tweaked and investigated. And so that's the big advantage of a committee-based government, is that you get all this stuff done in committee and then you bring it forward for the General Assembly or the Militia Assembly or the Jural Assembly, whichever, the International Business Assembly. There are committees backing up their decision making. And so this is how we all work together cooperatively and do our part and contribute to the whole, is by working on committees and by working within the assemblies themselves to get the work done.
Right. So this morning, I got a question about, well, what we need to do. And I said, well, what we need to do is we need more people to do those things, right? And they were like, well, and I said, wait, I got a little story to read you. And I read them the story of the little red hen. Does everybody remember the little red hen? Not I, said the cat. Not I, said the dog. Not I, said the goose. All right. When I got done, everybody was like, oh, you know.
You want the bread? Well, guess what?
That's it. That's it. So, I would encourage you all to look at the little red hen, because that's where many of our assemblies are. We need to call people to their duty and remind them that from the time they were a child, they've been told that their duty is to help out. Right. Their duty is to get involved, right?
Right. And if they don't, then the bread doesn't get baked.
That's right. That's exactly right. And nobody eats.
Right.
No one eats.
And then there's George Washington. Everybody, I personally like the example of let George do it. No, George is dead. Sorry, George can't do it anymore. He did his, while he was on this earth, he did his share and more. Okay, so we're not gonna be silly enough to think that George can or is going to do this. George is dead. All right, it's up to Anna and Katya and Alphonse and Joe and all the rest of us now.
All right. Well, Anna, I think we're going to leave it right there for this week and start answering a few questions, because there's a few that we have. We don't know about a timeline for banks, so I'm not going to answer any of those questions. We're on hold. We're waiting. It's soon. So there you go. So anyhow, all right. I'll take this one. So in regards to governance and creating laws for our people, keeping in mind that people are sovereign, on Virginia, we're struggling with the concept of creating laws that will control the behaviors. So I'm not really sure what that means, control the behaviors.
Well, it's one of those ironies that the more that I've learned about law over the years, the less faith I have in law. The more I adopt the perspective that law is actually set up so that we have to confront our failure to obey any law. Law is used to condemn mankind. It's not used to uplift mankind. It's not left to us to choose our behavior under the law. And so when I first realized that the federal government and its state-of-state franchises had burdened themselves down with 80 million codes, regulations, and statutes, and realized that they could not possibly know, nor obey, nor afford to enforce 80 million codes, regulations, and statutes, I said to myself, this is craziness. This is beyond any kind of ability of human beings or even corporations to obey or know or enforce. This is out there beyond the stars. 80 million. Okay. And then I studied the mechanism of how this was happening. How were we accruing so many codes, statutes, and regulations? And I found out that the legislatures are passing, on average, 300 new such laws and statutes and codes every year. And there's nothing, the other mechanism that is supposed to be in play, getting rid of bad statutes and getting rid of things that are not clearly stated and vague bits of doggerel and everything else that should never be in legislation at all isn't there. Our jury nullification process isn't there to get rid of bad laws and to say, no, that's unfair, or no, that's too vague for anybody to know what it means, or no, we don't agree. This is an unjust law that favors some and doesn't protect all. Our jury nullification process isn't there to knock out the bad stuff. So what we have is a constant accrual, just nothing but accrual. 300 more laws, 300 new statutes every year. That's 3,000 in a decade.
Right. And
Okay.
I'm not really sure what we mean by creating laws to control, because each of our voices on our assemblies are needed. Even the ones that don't agree with anything, and there are a few. Sometimes we have that they're going to be the ones that always vote against something. They're going to be the ones that
the contrarians.
The contrarians. But at the same time, when somebody has a disagreement with what's going on, we have to seek to try to understand why they disagree. Is there some valid nugget of information in their disagreement that we didn't consider in whatever it is that we're doing? Do we need to stop and say, okay, now wait a minute. So if you don't agree on this word, is there a different word that you could agree on?
Right.
And we work to build the consensus, right?
Right.
We're not there to truncate people's voices. We would be no better than what we came out of if that's what we were there to do, right? So sometimes it's hard. It can be very hard sometimes to listen to those uninsightful conversations that we have sometimes, that people have over feelings. But then we also need to look at the very root cause of why they feel that way. What drives them to that? What happened, or what is the nugget that they're bringing forward that we need to be concerned about?
Right. Yeah, we're not here to limit discussion or limit pushback or disagreements that happen. Lisa's exactly right. Our government has a long-standing tradition of dissent, and very few things in our government's history have been adopted unanimously. Okay. So we're to expect that there's going to be dissent. We're to accept the fact that dissent is part of our heritage, and dissent is healthy. Okay, that's what she's saying too, is that dissent is a healthy part of our process. So don't be alarmed because people are not in some sort of Nazi-fied lockstep. It's okay if they're not. I wanted to kind of finish my little diatribe about too many laws and regulations and statutes.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, think about this, folks. They've got 80 million statutes and codes on the book. Far, far more than they can ever enforce or know as individuals. Okay? So they're off in la-la land trying to do the impossible. They're trying to use the laws, codes, regulations to dictate every possible circumstance and every possible human response that could result from a circumstance. We, on the other hand, are going the other way. From our reasoning, our government, our laws started out with 10 commandments, and we couldn't even manage that. So if we couldn't manage to obey 10 commandments, what's the next answer? Well, then the great teacher, our beloved Yeshua, came and said, there are only 2 commandments, okay? Love the creation and the creator, and love the gift you've been given, love the love that you are part of, right?
Right.
Which we call the law of gratitude, which is to foster the awareness that we are the recipients of all these gifts, and we should be grateful for them and have trust in our value and importance because we have been so richly provided for. Okay, so there's the law of gratitude. And there's the law of love. Treat others as you would be treated. If you want fairness, give fairness. If you want forgiveness, forgive. If you want wealth, share wealth. Be part of a greater vision and a greater value system than anything that you have thus far embraced. And that in itself will lead you to fulfill all law.
Right.
If you just embrace those two laws, you'll never purposefully hurt anyone. You'll never purposefully cheat anyone. You'll never be in a position of being unjust to anyone. And you will never have the grasping, nasty attitudes that are so common in the world and in the government today. So we're going away. We're doing the 180 away from the 80 million code statutes and regulations and going toward a great simplification of law. We're going back to, okay, here's the two laws, folks. Concentrate on those. And you won't have to have 80 million codes, regulations, and statutes.
Right. And Anna, just to be very pointed about the golden rule of which you speak is one of our founding principles of our assemblies, is to treat others the way we wish to be treated. And if we're yelling at people and dismissing them and, treating them in ugly ways, what do we expect? Right? What do we expect?
Right. We're trying to, our vendors, our subcontractors are trying to rule over people using all these very specific, picking tiny little micromanaging rules. Thou shalt do this, thou shalt do that, thou shalt blah, 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 okay? And they're doing it in a negative way. They're prescribing what you can't do, what you can't think, what you can't say, what you can't, okay? We are saying no to that. We're saying that does nothing but set up a situation where vultures can swoop down upon people as revenue agents and use any little infraction as an excuse to tax and to levy, monetary fees and things like that. We don't want that. Our government is devoted to freedom. And what is freedom ultimately founded on? Freedom, you deserve freedom when you don't harm others. Okay? It's when you harm others that you deserve to be incarcerated. We all know this, right?
Right. So
let's say goodbye to the 80 million codes, regulations, and statutes. Let's just get rid of that incredible burden and that incredible expense. Think of how much money and time goes into administering their tax code alone. Hundreds of billions of dollars are wasted every year just administering their tax code.
Right.
They spend almost as much enforcing their tax code as they collect from it. In some cases, more. It is nothing but a horrendous drain on our resources and on the planet's resources to have all these hundreds of thousands, millions of people laboring over all these little tiny infractions that are contained within Title 26 alone. So we say goodbye to federal income tax, goodbye H&R Block, bye insurance companies, goodbye tax attorneys, goodbye to the entire mess. We can see where this attention to little rules and picayune little this is the law, this is the statute. We can see where this goes. And we say no to it. We say no.
Reminds me of Ebenezer Scrooge and his pencil.
Yeah, this whole mindset, this legalistic mindset that disrespects the actual law, we reject.
Correct.
What we want to concentrate on here are the two laws: becoming aware and grateful for our many, many blessings and the value of the natural world and the people around us, and to treat everybody as well as we can, and to do everything that we can to treat others as we would want to be treated ourselves, to respect other people's rights, to respect their needs, to respect their ideas. Even if we consider their ideas to be hopelessly wrong, we still have to respect them enough to consider their point of view. And I will tell you, in my own experience, there have been many times that I've locked horns with people and we've been just, at loggerheads.
Mm-hmm.
And yet over time, if you keep that dialogue going and you keep the doorway open, you will learn things from them that you could never have learned otherwise. And you will gain perspective and depth that you couldn't possibly gain without that. And in that creative conflict between radically opposed ideas, you come up with something that's true, something that's more true than you ever started out with on either side.
Right.
And then you can join together and you can become the best of allies. Then, having seen the central truth that you were both approaching from a different angle, you can agree and you can have the world that you want. Guys, I got to go. It's 11:38 here, and I just have visitors arriving.
Okay.
So I have to take off, but hugs and kisses to everybody. Have a great week. God bless. We love you. And we are working our tushes off. So see you next week.
Anna. All right. We'll stay in contact. All right, everyone. Well, that pretty much for today kind of answers most of our questions. We'll pick up next week. And if I didn't get to your question, hang on to it. We'll try to get to it next week and continue on with our discussion on how to actually build your assembly. All right, everyone, have an excellent week and make it count every day. We have to make it count towards getting our assemblies together. So thank you very much. We'll see you next week.